There's a misunderstanding in modern culture that if someone is not highly visible, they must be insecure. If they're not posting their face, their lifestyle, their victories, their appearance, then something must be missing. But that assumption reveals more about the culture than it does about the person being judged. Because for many empaths, the absence of self-display is not a symptom of low confidence. It is often the opposite. It can be the result of a mind that has moved beyond the need for constant external reinforcement. And this is where psychology becomes interesting. Most people have been conditioned to confuse attention with worth. Somewhere along the way, visibility became tied to identity. The more people see you, the more significant you appear to be. The more approval you receive, the more secure you must be. And social media, by design, amplifies this belief. It turns validation into a measurable system. Likes become social proof. Comments become emotional rewards. Views become a distorted form of status. But empaths often experience this dynamic differently, because empaths tend to be unusually aware of emotional undercurrents. They don't just see the surface exchange, someone posting a photo and others responding. They often perceive the invisible transaction beneath it, the need for affirmation, the performance hidden inside self-presentation, the unconscious bargaining that says, see me, approve of me, tell me I matter. And for a deeply self-aware empath, that can feel exhausting. Not because they believe posting is wrong, but because they often resist attaching their identity to public reaction. This is a critical distinction. An empath who doesn't post their...
Most people are taught to build an image. Empaths often feel compelled to protect a reality because they understand something others miss. The more identity becomes fused with public approval, the easier it is to lose yourself. Once your sense of worth depends on response, you become vulnerable to emotional outsourcing. Your confidence rises and falls based on who notices you. Your peace becomes negotiable. Your self-image becomes partly owned by strangers. And empaths, especially mature empaths, often sense the danger in that. They would rather be rooted than admired. They would rather be authentic than impressive. And sometimes they would rather be unknown than misunderstood. This often comes from a deeper philosophical orientation. Empaths frequently value essence over appearance, substance over display, meaning over spectacle. And when someone values inner coherence more than outer recognition, public self-promotion can start to feel strangely irrelevant. Because if you know who you are, what exactly are you trying to prove? That question unsettles people because much of modern behavior is built on proving attractiveness, proving success, proving happiness, proving relevance.
But empaths often begin stepping away from systems that require constant proof, not out of superiority, out of liberation. They stop performing identity and start inhabiting it, and that changes everything. You'll notice many emotionally intelligent people become increasingly private as they grow. That's not withdrawal, that's refinement. They realize not every truth needs broadcasting. Not every moment needs witnesses. Not every part of the self belongs in public. And perhaps most importantly, not all value increases when exposed. Some things deepen in privacy. Peace deepens in privacy. Self-trust deepens in privacy. Clarity deepens in privacy. And empaths often understand this intuitively. There's another layer most people overlook. Many empaths are highly sensitive to comparison culture, not because they are intimidated by others, but because they recognize how destructive comparison is to the human psyche. They see what happens when identity becomes a competition, when people begin curating life instead of living it, when self-worth gets trapped in a cycle of measuring, performing, and chasing emotional rewards.
And many empaths quietly opt out. That is not passivity. That is psychological independence. It is the refusal to let technology dictate self-perception. It is the refusal to turn identity into a product. And in a world increasingly obsessed with being witnessed, there is extraordinary power in becoming self-defined. That power is often misunderstood. Silence gets mistaken for insecurity. Privacy gets mistaken for weakness. Restraint gets mistaken for absence. But some of the most secure people in the world have no interest in constant visibility because they are no longer hungry for what attention feeds. They have found nourishment elsewhere, in purpose, in inner peace, in real relationships, in self-respect. And that is something algorithms cannot measure. In fact, one of the strongest signs of inner stability is the ability to exist without announcing yourself, to know your worth without displaying it, to possess depth without packaging it, to remain whole without applause. That is not social detachment. That is freedom. And for many empaths, not posting their photos is a quiet expression of that freedom, a silent declaration that identity is not a performance, that worth does not require witnesses, that presence is not diminished by privacy. And maybe this is what unsettles others most, because when someone no longer needs validation, they become difficult to control. They cannot be manipulated by approval. They cannot be easily drawn into comparison. They cannot be seduced by superficial recognition. And that kind of psychological sovereignty is rare, but it is real. And many empaths live it quietly, not because they are hiding, because they have stopped confusing visibility with value. And that may be one of the most radical acts of self-possession in the modern